You know, it's one thing to watch a player ruin their own career through their own actions. You can only feel so bad about it at the end of the day. I mean, they literally did it to themselves. But it's another thing when you watch another player completely obliterate the future of an up-and-coming star, resulting in that person just never getting anywhere.
Dallas Station WFAA.
I don't care how good he is. I don't care if the Cowboys made a great deal.
Football is the quintessential team sport. There are 11 people in the field, and every single one of their successes is dependent on the rest of their teammates. But while a player may need the rest of the unit to be successful sometimes, it only takes one bad teammate to absolutely ruin a player's career. So today, let's take a look back at 10 instances in which an NFL player absolutely wrecked one of his teammates' careers. Starting off with none other than the now infamous IK Enemkali, who, albeit inadvertently, ruined the career trajectory of his former teammate, quarterback Geno Smith. Unlike a lot of the instances we'll touch on today, the downfall of Geno Smith was largely a chain of reactions stemming from a random, isolated incident rather than a long-standing feud or power struggle or anything like that. Geno was thrust into a chance at starting his rookie year, as the Jets tried to solve their seemingly never-ending search for a quarterback by investing a high second-round pick in the West Virginia standout. Though he made a ton of mistakes his rookie season, including 21 interceptions, he definitely showed flashes, and the team ultimately finished 8-8, and they thought they had something to build on. Much to the chagrin of the Jets, and the surprise of absolutely nobody else, Smith regressed the following season, putting his security as the full-time starter at risk in 2015. Then, the seemingly unthinkable happened and sent Smith's career into a tailspin. Enemkali cold-cocked Smith in the locker room, which all apparently stemmed from a $600 debt. The 6th-round pick was cut almost immediately, and Smith, well, he had a broken jaw that ended up costing him any chance of keeping his job in New York. And though Smith has since managed to maintain a foothold in the league, he has been mostly a backup ever since. It seems like now that Russell Wilson has been traded from Seattle, Geno might have one last chance at becoming a starter. But I wouldn't hold my breath. And until proven otherwise, it is safe to say his career was wrecked by the vicious right hand of teammate IK Enemkali. Staying on the topic of AFC quarterbacks, though in this case it was really the signal caller doing a number on the career of his teammate instead, we're talking about what Ben Roethlisberger did to former All-Pro running back LeVeon Bell. Of course, Bell's seemingly endless contract negotiations with Pittsburgh played a big role in it, but looking back, it's pretty obvious that his strained relationship with Big Ben played a sizable role in his downfall. Roethlisberger was the golden child in Pittsburgh. He could do absolutely no wrong, and he was paid handsomely for his services. But he never really developed into the leader that the Steelers organization acted like he was. And Bell, one of the most important players in the league at the time, let alone on the team, was one of many teammates that Ben isolated, and really left hanging out to dry during his negotiations with the team. You have to imagine if Ben tried to broker peace between the two sides, maybe Bell doesn't sit out a year and end up committing career suicide by joining Adam Gase's Jets. It's a real shame too. Bell was one of the most exciting players to watch, and he just flamed out in the blink of an eye, largely because of Ben's disinterest in him that appeared to border on dislike, or maybe even jealousy because of how Bell was talked about in the media during his prime. After all, Ben did always like to believe he was the straw that stirred the drink in Pittsburgh. Now we journey out to the West Coast with an oldie but a goodie, Terrell Owens, who could have been on this list for the damage he did to a couple of teammates, but perhaps none more so than his quarterback during his days as a member of the San Francisco 49ers, Jeff Garcia. Prior to Owens taking his battering ram of an ego to Garcia's career, the undersized quarterback had one of the most inspirational careers of his generation. He went undrafted out of San Jose State, but was not deterred and tried his luck in the CFL, where he was a 4-time All-Star and a Grey Cup champion, eventually earning another shot at the NFL, with San Fran as Steve Young's backup. Young, however, suffered a nasty concussion in 1999, which finished his season early, and ultimately resulted in him retiring ahead of the 2000 season. That put Garcia in a position to jockey with fellow signal caller Steve Stenstrom for the starting gig. During Garcia's rookie year, he performed reasonably well, particularly during a second stint in which he threw 8 touchdowns to 2 interceptions in the final 5 games of the season. He ended up earning the full-time starting job the following year and shocked absolutely everyone by setting a 49ers team record with 4,278 passing yards to go along with 31 touchdowns and just 10 interceptions. Though the team ultimately struggled, finishing with a 6-10 record, Garcia put the league on notice and earned a trip to the Pro Bowl. The following season, Garcia continued to improve and became widely considered as a bona fide starter in the NFL. Unfortunately, as time progressed, there was one very important figure who just didn't seem to agree with all this, and that was his star receiver, Terrell Owens. Their relationship really started to sour in 2003 when Owens began publicly praising the play of backup QB Tim Rattay. The conflict affected both Garcia's play and the perception of him league-wide. And then, to pour gasoline on the fire, after being dealt to Philadelphia, Owens made comments to Playboy insinuating that Garcia was gay, which of course has nothing to do with his ability on the field, but created a huge media firestorm at the time. Which, of course, has absolutely nothing to do with his ability on the field, but created a huge media firestorm at the time. Garcia only posted one more winning season after leaving San Francisco, and he was just never really the same player that he was when he first broke into the league in the early 2000s. More recently, we saw another well-known instance of a bullied teammate destroying someone's career, and that, of course, is what played out down in Miami between Richie Incognito and Jonathan Martin. The offensive tackle was a 2-time All-American during his college days at Stanford, and Miami had high hopes for him when they took him early in the second round of the 2012 NFL Draft. Unfortunately, that all came unraveled largely because of the negative impact that one of his fellow linemen had on him. Richie Incognito bullied Martin so heinously throughout their playing days together, uttering phrases and words that frankly we don't want to and literally cannot say on YouTube, that was so bad that it became national news. Though Martin was largely viewed by the public as a sympathetic character, there is no denying that it became a huge distraction for him professionally. And once the news broke and he sat out the remainder of the season, in that moment, I felt like Martin's potential in the NFL vanished. Miami dealt him to San Francisco, where he played sparingly for one season before flaming out of the league entirely. Now, if you think that's bad, wait until you check out what Bill Romanowski, another infamous NFL bully, did to Marcus Williams. Williams was a former undrafted free agent who had earned his keep with the Raiders, getting a regular burn on the special teams unit, and by some accounts, inching his way towards a shot at playing on the O-line. But all of that came crashing down in a second when he and Romanowski got into an altercation in practice that resulted in Romanowski blindsiding him with a punch to the face. The hit broke Williams' eye socket, damaged his vision and memory, and ended his young career. There really isn't any nuance to this one. Romanowski just senselessly wrecked his teammate's career over a really petty squabble. Nothing more, nothing less. Kinda like what Johnny Manziel did to Josh Gordon. In this case, it wasn't Manziel rocking Gordon in the face because, let's be honest, that would not have panned out well for the undersized quarterback. But rather, during their brief time in Cleveland together, Manziel led Gordon down all of the wrong paths. Flash, as he was known, had a great first 2 seasons in the NFL, first finishing among the top of his rookie class in 2012 with 50 catches, 805 yards, and 2 touchdowns, and then skyrocketing to new heights in year 2, leading the league in receiving yards despite missing 2 games to the first of what would sadly be many suspensions, largely because one Johnny Football pulled into town in 2014. And that was when things really started to get out of control for Gordon. He was arrested for a DWI, and over the coming years, the suspensions would come down on him like an avalanche. He played just 10 games over the next 4 seasons and hasn't played a full season since his rookie year. Imagine the Browns had drafted someone like Derek Carr or Teddy Bridgewater instead of Manziel, who Gordon lived with and regularly partied with. Perhaps either of those guys could have been a calming influence, but no. Manziel came to town and Gordon spiraled out of control entirely. While it is definitely sad to see young players have negative influences on one another, where it gets even more twisted is when a veteran who really should know better gets in the ear of a young player and sends them down a dark path, which is exactly what we saw happen in Dallas with Randy Gregory and Greg Hardy. To be honest, a lot of this is Jerry Jones's fault for even entertaining the thought of bringing the talented but extremely troubled defensive end to town after the vicious domestic violence allegations against him. But this is Jerry Jones we're talking about, and if an unscrupulous attempt at winning can masquerade as a shot at redemption, you best believe he's gonna take it. He signed Hardy, let him serve his 4-game suspension, and then he was on the field in Dallas. Until his own situation escalated. Nevertheless, Hardy's brief time in Dallas gave him ample opportunity to disrupt the career of the Cowboys' second-round pick. Gregory has a problem with addiction. That's not Hardy's fault, David Moore, staff writer for the Dallas Morning News, wrote. But there was a growing concern at Valley Ranch that Hardy had become a negative influence on Gregory during the player's rookie season. It's a stretch to say that Hardy took Gregory under his wing, but he certainly didn't provide a positive example of what it takes to be a professional in the league. People in the organization said Hardy was regularly late to meetings, had an awful demeanor around the facilities, and that after the photos of what he did to his former girlfriend leaked to the public, he hit a whole new stratosphere of bad role model. So much so that Dallas ultimately decided to move away from Hardy after that season. Better late than never, I guess. Staying in the NFC East, let's jump to the Eagles' longtime quarterback Donovan McNabb and the bomb that he apparently dropped on teammate Freddie Mitchell's career. At least, Mitchell really seems to think so. According to Mitchell, people in and around the organization would regularly come up to him and ask what was going on with him and the Eagles' star quarterback. Mitchell went as far as to say that he had strippers coming up to him and asking why McNabb hated him. And considering what we have learned about McNabb over the years, this doesn't seem impossible. He has proven to be in many ways mercurial and not exactly the easiest guy to get along with, which is why modern Eagles like Lane Johnson have spoken out against him, because apparently he never really carried himself in the way you might expect when he'd revisit the team's facilities. There will always be a high degree of he said, she said in the beef between Mitchell and McNabb, but regardless of where exactly the truth and subsequent blame lands on that spectrum, it's clear that it had a negative impact on Mitchell's career. Last but not least, we have perhaps the most hilarious feud on this list that resulted in one teammate unfortunately torpedoing another's career. And that is what played out between Peyton Manning and Mike Vanderjagt in the early to mid-2000s. Now, the reason that I don't feel all that badly about what Manning did to Vanderjagt's career is because in many ways, the former All-Pro kicker did it to himself by publicly speaking out against the team's star quarterback and head coach after a tough playoff loss. The Colts are forced to keep the talented kicker on the roster because of the sizable gap between him and a potential replacement, as well as the sizable financial commitment they had already made in him. But between his troubled relationship with Peyton, who famously called him an idiot kicker, and his continued, well, for lack of a more creative term, idiocy, Vanderjagt was eventually shown the door in Indy. After he left the Colts, he kicked in Dallas for one season and then found himself out of the league. Meanwhile, Peyton and the Colts went on to capture a Super Bowl win in their first year without Mike. Tough scene for Vanderjagt. Tough scene. But can you think of any other NFL players who had their careers ruined by a teammate? Join us in the comments section below. If you like this video and learned a thing or two, clicking the like button helps out a ton, and hey, we appreciate it. If this is your first time coming around to TPS though, subscribing is a great idea because we put out videos like this every single day. But as always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.